Further ado to introduce Susi Brister, who's going to talk a bit about her work and its making and the thought behind it, and then she'll be available for some questions. So save all your good questions and join me in welcoming Susi.
Want to give a few thanks. So I want to thank very much Women in Their Work and the board and staff and everyone who's made this possible. Also, thank you to everyone who's given me all their support, because it does take a bit of a village to make this happen. And then a very special public thank you to my models, who have had to endure 110-degree weather under fur couching or standing in murky water with 50 pounds of hair extension in the middle of July. So thank you so much. Means a lot to me that you guys helped me out. A little bit about the work. You can see that I'm really interested in landscape and also interested in a lot of texture and fabric and artificiality, and the way that we as humans have a drive to recreate nature or aspects of nature, whether it's fur or hair or palm trees, or even printed landscapes like on umbrellas and on fabric. So I take those recreations and I reinsert them into the landscape, either as figures sort of becoming part of the landscape, again, as camouflage, or as just sort of creatures themselves inhabiting the land in different ways. And I've made a palm tree forest too, so I thought about, instead of just having the works back in the landscape, I thought about kind of bringing this representation of landscape into the interior as well. So that's about it. And I'm welcome to answer any questions you may have about individual works or all the work in general. Anyone have any questions?
What are the prices?
Where do we buy?
Here's a price sheet.
Oh.
You can choose.
Artillery. Great.
There's a question.
Yeah.
Hi, how do you choose fabrics and textures? Do you see something and it inspires you to go into a certain environment?
Yeah, that's a really good question. A lot of people have asked me actually about the inspiration for a lot of these works, and it really depends. It kind of varies work per work. Originally, I was really material driven, and I still am, you know, like I actually just sort of happened upon one of these palm trees, and then the idea like took off. Since then, I've done a lot of research, and I spend way too much time on the internet, on fabric sites, and in craft stores. Some things like this actually came from a sketch, so some things have started just sort of percolating, and I sketch them out and then try in my own way to make them happen. And I'm no sculptor by training, so I usually do it kind of the hard way. But things have evolved, and instead of just having sort of flat wrapped figures, I'm making a lot more things myself. So I made this suit out of hair extensions, and I did another recent work here this year out of artificial flowers. So Kira, you can raise your hand. This is my flower creature. Yeah, so it kind of depends. Sometimes I even find a location. For example, the big piece over here was taken in Palmetto State Park, and there's a really unique ecosystem where they have, like, it's a swamp and there's palmettos, and I went camping there and thought, well, I have to do something here, clearly. So I actually go out and then I found fabric, it's Tommy Bahama, that magically fits it perfectly, right? And so that camouflage magic happens in that way. So it kind of just depends on the piece, but very much material driven or landscape driven. Either end kind of goes together. Anything? Well, thank you all so much. That's okay.
How extensively do you get into the kind of identities of these creature forms? Can you really feel who they are, or are they just impressions?
I don't really know how to answer that. The ones that I make myself usually take a while, and so we have a really intimate relationship with each other, and hot glue and string. So they sort of evolve, and in that case, I feel like they start to, create an identity. But even the ones that I use just fabric, I'm trying to think of examples, like this guy over here in the corner, or my landscape the winter pastoral over there. You know, they're flat, but I actually work with my images a really long time. You know, like I scan them and I work with them, and I don't manipulate them heavily, but I work with them for months usually, and so over that time they sort of start to become their own thing. And so in that sense, I sort of feel like they have a story. That's why I called it Fables. To that end, a fable is just a short literary genre where there's a short story in which all the characters are played by mythical creatures or animals or plants. So I really think of these as sort of small vignettes where you can maybe make your own interpretation or your own sort of narrative happening, but they do all kind of have their own personalities to me.
Hey, Susie, were most of these produced or taken here in Central Texas, or did you go out of state? And over what period of time were they?
I have a few. This one in the corner that I mentioned before with the rainbow stripes, that's in Arizona, Petrified Forest National Park. But the vast majority of these were taken here in Texas. Yeah, Central Texas and the coast.
And when?
Most of them were done this year, or within the past 2 years. So it's 13 of these images were made just for the show and are very, very new. What do you guys?
Hey, what do you shoot these with?
I shoot them with a Hasselblad thing. Yeah, so they're all shot with a medium format camera. I still shoot film, so I don't shoot digital. I'm still kind of old school. But I do scan them and print them digitally, so it's kind of a hybrid process. Yes?
Do you digitally manipulate them to, well, I'm sure you do, but like to what degree?
To what degree? I do most of what I want to do conceptually in the camera, right? So I shoot them the way I want them to look, and when I scan them and work with them, it's mostly just kind of color, occasionally like small things like contrast or density, you know, like little bitty things that, you know, just to make it the ideal picture that I would want it to be. But it really is, for what I believe is to be like a representation of what I was seeing as the photographer in that place. Yeah. Anything else? Yes.
Which one do you think best captures the spirit of the show?
Oh, good question. You're asking me to pick favorites, and I don't know how I feel about that. This one is like really, right? Like, that's why it has the place of honor. This one I have a special place in my heart for too, because it's the first one that I ever sort of sketched out beforehand, and for years, like thought about how am I going to make it, and how am I going to make it, and how am I going to make it, and had very long email conversations with Miss Amy in China, who had them produced for me. So I think in the spirit of the show, this is probably what I would say, but I think they all touch on slightly different things, and all together kind of talk about what I'm trying to talk about. Yeah.
Well, Susie, they are all beautiful.
And thank you all so much for coming in.